All right, I'm going to attempt to go over this now. What I did in class the other day was I gave this out, and I asked people to attempt to create this guessing game app. All right, and I'll show you the way it looks, etc., in just a couple minutes. But what I did, and Andrews, this is more for you because you weren't here, but just so you know, is I had a meeting on Tuesday that I had to go to for an hour. Well, it didn't last an hour. But the point is, I wasn't sure how long it would last, so I kind of took a screenshot, which I can't save onto the Mac, and I put that up there and I said, try to build this. Okay? And then when you went through there, I said if you didn't like the way that mine looked, you could write it any way you wanted to. But you were supposed to come in and create a random number using the ARC4 uniform. Okay? You were also supposed to create your buttons programmatically just because you could, to show you how to do that. And I'll show you the interface. It'll probably make more sense than just going over this. And that is my interface. Looks like this. Nothing grand, glorious, pretty, or anything. But what ends up happening is the two buttons show when you run the program. I'm going to run it in just a second. And the idea is this is a numeric only keypad. So you put a number in here. For instance, it's supposed to be a random number between 1 and 100. So I put in 50. And I click the button that says make guess. And this will either say too high, too low, or you're correct, or something along those lines. And this, every time I guess, will increment. Does that make sense to everybody as far as at least what I was asking for? All right. Then I'll show you the one that I did. I was mentioning before too, if you didn't hear this, I don't know about any of you, but because my machine isn't, it's not exactly the same as your machines, but I've been dropping my connection with the simulator. It'll just drop sometimes, or it won't come up. And then as soon as I quit the simulator, it comes up and it says, cannot connect to iPhone using this simulator. All right, it's something along those lines. And then it hangs. Sometimes if I bring it up 2 or 3 times on a second or third time, then it's fine. So I'm going to give it a second here, and if nothing comes up, then I'll stop it and start it again. Kind of did this in Mark's honor, and mine also, because it is a green and gold app. All right. I was at lunch last Friday, and this older lady came up to me. She points, I had a Packer sweatshirt on. She points at, she goes, still believe in them? I said, hey, I said they gave away a game that they should have won, and they still almost won it. So yeah, I said I have no problem with that. I said it's fine. And then there's 2 people sitting behind us, and the guy is a Broncos fan, so he could care less, and the woman's a Seahawks fan. So she starts talking about how great the Seahawks are, and I told her, I said Pete Carroll has one of those punch me faces. She said, what does that mean? I said, when I saw him jumping up and down at the end of the game, if I was Mike McCarthy, I would have wanted to go over there and punch him in the face. She didn't like that at all. She didn't talk anymore after that.
This is not Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
He coached in college, broke a bunch of rules, and bailed out on the school 5 months before all that.
Yep. See, there it is. Lost connection iPhone 6. And it doesn't show until you get off, so then normally when I run it a second time, it'll be fine. Normally. But I'll give it a second anyway. So I actually have no problems after I get done with this giving you the code. You can key it in yourselves. Okay? But then I'm going to ask that you try to do the other stuff because I didn't do the thing where if you're within 5, etc., you make it change color or whatever the heck it was. So again, I haven't played with the layout manager at all yet, so it doesn't look very pretty, but it's functional. All right, so please guess the random number. So click here. Come on, it'll come. There it is. And you got to keep moving it up and down. So again, I'll let's try 52. All right, and there's 52. Make the guess. That's too high. All right. So got to come back down here again. This is the real pain in the butt was working with this. So I got to remove those. So 52 is too high. Let's take 25. All right. Make the guess. Still too high. All right. Let's try 12. Still too high. Come on. Tried 8. Too low. Well, I'm getting there. Let's try 10. Yeah. So there's 10. Too low. Well, it better be, or my logic is really flawed. No, it only takes whole numbers. So there's 11. Guess correct. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, and I also put some radius on the buttons so to try, because otherwise they come up when you program them, they look square. All right, and literally I just went out, because I haven't done all that much with this stuff either, so I just went out online and looked at it and tried a bunch of stuff. If it worked, fine. If it didn't, commented it out because I might want to go use something from it later, and then just put, basically just did it that way. So this is what I'm going to do. Let's see. First, I'm going to stop the simulator. And I'm going to minimize this. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it, right? That's not what I wanted to do at all. Well, that wasn't a great thing to do, but whatever. Just do it like this. Grab that whole thing. Okay. Oh, okay.
if you want to print it, they charge your account. That screen don't come up, just went on and printed it, wherever I wanted to print. I was like, that's cool, I'm not paid now.
I haven't printed anything this year, so I don't know if we get the prop box or not.
Yeah, comes up. Cause they always take $15 of your funds.
Well, first 15 is free from school.
$15 worth is what you have that they take out of you.
You should get that back at the end of the year.
But
I know.
Yeah, the instructor told me that. Don't be shy about printing. Print as much stuff as you can and try and use up that money because at the end of the year, whatever you don't spend, they keep it. Throw it into a
Next year's fund.
I'm still business somebody's got going. Probably IT or $5 a year.
They get my $15 a year.
But,
So they get about my $15 a year.
yeah, you don't print anything.
I think last year I used maybe $1.
Yeah, I don't think I got a $1.
I don't think so either. I think I printed like three things.
I would have liked to have the money because I could bought my own ink for my printer. Now I'm out of ink.
Let's see if that works.
I want the button to look like a mushroom.
You can do it.
Right. Use an image.
All right, let's take a look. Let's take a look for a few minutes at this code. All right. And I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent about it. There's a lot of ways, as you can probably guess, that this could have been done. This is just the way that I chose. Okay? And a lot of times when I'm doing this stuff, if I do it at home, which I'd rather do it at home than here. First of all, I hate going upstairs and trying to do anything in the office up there. It's just too loud. All right? And when I come in here, I usually get here at 6 in the morning, and a lot of times by 6:10, I'm down here. And it works really nice because typically I don't see anybody till 8. And the reason I say that that's nice is if I got to tape something, it's quiet, etc. All right? So when you take a look at the code here, and sorry, the second page, when you flip it over, it looks right side up, but if you don't, it looks upside down because I had the settings wrong. But let's just go through the code. All right, so first it says there, declare program variables. All right, and the thing that's got the guess in there for the current guess, I didn't need it up there, so I just commented it out. The stuff that's there for the num guesses and the random num, I didn't have to declare them at the top of the program, but I did declare them at the top of the program. Again, I'm not saying that everything that's in here is done in the most optimal, ideal, or best way possible. All right. So then hopefully it makes sense to people that when you again, I'm not going to switch back and forth between these, but just remember what the app looks like. Okay. There's a label up here that just says, please guess a number, and then here, there's the number. So that's the text field that has the number in it. This has got the status, which is again in here, it's either going to say too high, too low, or you got it. This has got your number of guesses in there, and then there's a button here, and there's a button here. This button is your make a guess button, and this button is your generate new number button. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, so when taking it from the top, what I had to wire up was I wanted to wire up the text field, and anything that was going to change, so the text field was going to change, that label was going to change, and that label was going to change. All right? Again, when I gave the lecture this morning, the one that unfortunately didn't get recorded, but I was talking about the fact that the way that I try to look at this is there are actions and there are outlets, right? And I mean, an action is a type of outlet, but I look at outlets as being for stuff that's more passive, and that actions are for things that are more active. Well, the way that we get stuff to happen in this program is we click this button or we click this button. I think that makes sense to everybody. So I wired both those up to be IB actions. All right? Depending on what you click, the button here or the button here, that's going to change what's in really all three of the things that are here. All right? So again, you started off, I put 50 in there. And I click the make a guess button. And we're going to pretend here that the number is 87. Okay, I just made that up. So in here it should say too low. All right? And I didn't have a clear type of thing in there, but I could have put another button to do that. So I'm going to remove the 50 from there, and I'll put in 75. And I click it again. So now num guesses was 1, but now I just made another guess, so it's 2. And it still says too low. All right? So let's just say we put in 88. Then this changes to a 3, and it says too high. All that makes sense? Eventually, the idea is, let's say it takes me 6 guesses, and I get 87, and it says something like, you are correct. All right, now I'm done playing this round, so to speak, so I click the Generate New Number button. When I click the Generate New Number button, the idea is that's supposed to clear this out, that's supposed to clear this out, and that's supposed to clear this out. Does all that make sense? All right, because that basically is the code. So when you look at it, again, I've got my 3 IB outlets, which are this text field, that variable, and that variable. I'm sorry, text field, label, and label. So that text field, all right, where you actually enter the guess, the label for the status, and the label for the number of guesses. All right? Then I created some program constants. Didn't have to do it this way, but I just, I haven't done much work with let, so I thought, what the heck? I said that the minimum number I'm going to expect is 1. The maximum number I'm going to expect is 100, because that's what I told it to generate the random number between. So in other words, if you enter a number less than 1 or greater than 100, the program should come back and tell you that you made a mistake. Okay? Then what I decided to do too was the strings that were going to appear in here, those being too high, too low, guess correct, out of range, or invalid attempt made, I just created all them and made them string constants. All right? So you can see those in lines 23 through 29. Does all that so far make sense? Okay. All right. Then in the view did load, this is where I told you to do this. And I didn't really, there were a bunch of different Stack Overflows and some other stuff, and I just got online and started playing with this stuff. All right? So when you look at this is the bottom of page 1, and it goes up to the next page, but it says create make guess button. All right? Let make guess button equals UI button. So I'm on line 36. That's instantiating or creating a new button object. That should make sense to everybody. Then I'm setting the title. So the title on here now should be make guess after we run through that. All right. Then I set the color of the title to be green. All right, and just made some, just did some stuff with colors. That's all. All right. Then I created the rectangle, and that was where to place it. Okay. And those four coordinates that you see on line 39 where it says 75, 250, 125, and 25. Those four coordinates that you see in there under CJ Rec Make are the X coordinate, the Y coordinate, the width, and the height. Does that make sense? All right. And so that was just some playing around because what I wanted to do was make sure that they looked somewhere decent on the screen. Now, I didn't look at this. This was dumb on my part. But I would guess, I could be wrong here, and one of you, if you want to Google it right now, you can. But I would guess that even though I'm making that button programmatically, there may be a way for it to show up in Interface Builder. But there may not be. I don't know. Since we're doing it programmatically, it may not show up except when the program's running. See what I'm saying? It's kind of like when we were working in the .NET languages and you set something in code. It didn't show until that code hit. And probably that's the same way. But there may be a way to do that. I don't know. So turning that page over. And I set the background color of the button to yellow. And the next line, line 41, which was, it's a little wider line, that's important that you realize this. All right, add target, self. That means that whatever we're going to do here is going to be reflected on the button itself. What's going to happen? Well, the action that I want to have happen is, it's connected to make guest button pressed because that's what I call this. That's the name of the routine. If you flip back and you look on, I guess it's a little farther down, I'm sorry, on line 58, that's the name of the routine. All right, so in other words, I'm saying when you push down on that button and let go, I want that routine to be called. All right? And I set the radius to get the rounded effect on the button, and then I basically said to add it or show it on the screen. Okay, and where it says self.view.add_subview, make guess button. Literally, your screen, the way that this is looked at by iOS is this is a view. And literally, everything that you put on there is a view component. Did you hear what I said? All right, and technically, their terminology for it is everything that you're putting on here is a subview. That's iOS terminology, not JPS terminology. It's not mine. All right. So when it says there's self.view.add_subview, that's adding it right there, line 43. That's adding that particular thing to our GUI. And then we do the exact same thing. So hopefully I don't have to run over them again. But for the other button, for the new number, it's all the same code. The only thing that's different is instead of the title being make guess, the title is new number. And the placement of the rectangle, instead of 75, 250, it's 225, 250. All right, and I had to do a little bit of jacking around with that to get it where I wanted it to go. Now, there probably is a better way of doing it than the way that I did it, but I'm not much more experienced at this than you are. All right, just so you're aware of that. I'm just being honest with you. So if there's a better way, when I go through this stuff, if you write your code and you come up with a better way and you go, well, maybe Jeff didn't know this, there's probably a good chance Jeff didn't know this. So if you want to share it with everybody, that's great. Then on line 55, we call create random number, and that's on the last page at the very bottom. Very short little function there. And I had some problems with the arc random that I asked you to use, so I just used a different one. They're all related. They're all in the same family. And what the problem was, notice that I had to put uniform 100 plus 1, because like most random number generated functions, putting a 0 or putting a 100 there by itself, that creates a number between 0 and that upper bound. All right? And it was really 0 and less than that. So by adding 1 to it, that in line 107, that made sure that I was generating a random number between 1 and 100. I ran it several times. It seemed to work, is what I'm telling you. All right? So let's take a look at the individual routines for the button. First, starting on line 58 in the middle of page 2, make guess button pressed. All right, I tried to put some comments in here. I'm sure not nearly as many as I should have or could have, but I put a few in here. First, since you pressed this button, you made a guess. That makes sense. You made a guess because you pressed the button. So I incremented the num guesses counter by saying num guesses plus plus. All right, but remember, the way this works, if I come in here and put in 50, if I put that in right there, that's not the number 50. That's the string 50. All right? So what you see there on line 65 is I said, okay, the first thing I'm going to want to do, this number of guesses, I just made a 1. I just added to it on the previous line, in line 61, where I said num guesses plus plus. So num guesses. I come through here and I'm running the program now. Num guesses. I originally set that to 0. Now I put in 50 and I click the button. Well, that's not 0 anymore, it's 1. Right? But I want that number to appear in here. And remember, this is a pure programming language. So I want to take a digit and I want to stick it into a field that only accepts strings. So I tried this a few different ways, and the way that seemed to work the best was I literally casted it on line 65. So I said, cast that num guesses, this, into a string, and then copy it to here. That's what line 65 is saying. Does that make sense? All right. Then it says, convert the value in the text field to an int. That's this. So now I want to take that string 50, and I want to convert that to the number 50. So I'm going the other way. So there I created the variable, the guess, and I said, guess text field dot text dot to int. Literally converted to an int. Now, I want to mention one thing about this, because if nothing else, I don't mind critiquing my own stuff that I've written. So if there's things in here that you see that are wrong, it's wrong because I did it wrong. Not on purpose, but because I did it wrong. And I want to show you one example of this. All right? Can anybody look at this right here? Just look at what's right here. And if I'm going to keep making guesses and making guesses and making guesses, what I could have done here is I could have, for example, I could have just set var the guess equal to 0 once, but I'm recreating the variable basically every time. You could look at this code and critique it and say you could have written this a lot better. Yes, I could have. That's all I'm saying. So this line that you see here, that one is taking the number of your guess and putting it into here. All right, that's why we cast it to a string. Then we're going the other way. We're taking what was in this string and we're not casting it, but we're basically calling a method on it to convert it to an int, because what we're putting it into is a variable that holds an int. I could have really said there, var the guess colon space int. That might have been better to do that. All right. Then I came in here and checked this. And I even said, I think in the instructions, feel free to use the logic that we had for that prime number program on this. And that's what I did here. So I said, okay, what if we do this? First, somebody answer me this question. This is the guess you just made. When is this going to be nil? Line 70. When is that going to be nil?
When you click on the button and there's no entry in the
Very good.
text field.
So exactly right. If there's nothing in there at all, and I click the button, that shouldn't happen most of the time if the person playing the game understands the rules, right?
Right.
So I said if it's not nil, do all this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to set it to invalid. So that really is the only time that should happen, because we made the keypad numeric. So instead of checking that, instead of saying if guess equal nil, I don't want to check what shouldn't happen most of the time. I want to take what shouldn't happen most of the time and put it in my else. All right? So if it's not nil, what do we know? Using your same logic, what do you know?
Something in there.
There's something in there. And since it's a numeric keypad, it's got to be a number. All right? So we actually have, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 possibilities. We put in a number that's out of range. Remember those constants? It's less than 1 or it's greater than 100. So we just fat-fingered or just wanted to see what would happen if we put in 663. So if that happens, it should come in and say, give us a message that says out of range.
If it's just a numeric keypad,
Yes.
it won't have operators on it.
No.
So you can't put a negative number in.
No, the way it's set up.
But they could put.
But, yes, that's correct. So this is going to handle anything that's less than 1 or that's greater than 100. Does that make sense? I did a bunch of jacking around with this. I tried to take guess status label.text and set it to a variable, and then work with a variable, it didn't like that. I'm not sure why. I tried all sorts of different things. All right, I scare the hell out of my dog when I'm working at the kitchen table because I'll drop F-bombs up right and left as I'm working on this stuff. And all of a sudden, she's looking at me, and she's 10 years old, and she's like about that big, and she's just shaking like crazy.
Peter's gonna show up.
All right. So, if we get down to here, it's within range. We know that. So either it's too low a guess, or it's too high a guess, or it's correct. All right? I decided to check for my invalid stuff first. To me, that made the most sense. But when you think about it, there's only a 1 in 100 chance that you're going to get it right. Correct? I mean, technically, they're on the first guess at least, there's a 1 out of 100 chance you're going to get it right. So I put the equal down at the bottom. I could have done these either way. I could have said if it's greater than, and then put the less than here, or the way I did them. It really doesn't matter. So again, if I put a number in here, and it happens to be a valid number. So again, assuming 87 was our number, and I put a 50 in here. All right, first time I run it, I put a 500. So play computer. Is it less than that? No. Is it greater than that? Yes. So it's going to put in here out of range. All right? So I said, oh, I fat fingered. I didn't mean to do that. So I take a 0 off. Now, is that true? No. Is it less than a number? Yes. So I'm going to put in there too low. All right? So I run it again. And do you all know the secret to playing this game? All right? You do. Okay, you're saying you do. The idea is you've got 1 to 100. Always guess 50. Always make that your first guess. And if it's higher than that, so it was 87, so it's higher than that. So now I've eliminated 50 possibilities in one guess. All right, so then you cut it in half again. I'm doing a binary or a halving type of a search here. So you say 75. Nope. All right, now in 2 guesses, I've removed 3/4 of the possibilities. Let's pretend it was 88 because 87 would be the one I'd guess next. All right, because that's kind of in the middle. So I guess now 87. No. Now in 3 guesses, I've got 87% of those checked. All right, now I'd probably end up going up. So I'd probably guess here like, I don't know, maybe 93. No. So now I know it can't be 1 to 87, and it can't be 93 to 100. So in 1, 2, 3, 4 guesses, I've eliminated about 90 possibilities. All right? And this works even better doing it this way. This works even better when you've got a bigger number. All right? So is there anything in there that doesn't make sense in that particular routine? So I'm going to go over the other routine next.
Wait, just a question. When you click the button, make guess, did you also clear your input field out at the same
No.
time? No.
No, I didn't clear this one out at all. I manually made you go in there and do that. And the only reason you could, but the reason that I did it like that, then I'm thinking to myself, and I look up at the clock, and I always, if I don't go to bed by 10, it's hard to believe I'd be squirrely, but I get really in a bad mood, and I looked up, and it was 5 after 10, and I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore. All right? But I started to think, I wonder if I could put a timer in there. Because that's how I learned about timers in JavaScript. I started, okay, I want to put so I just literally Googled JavaScript timers and kept finding one, kept looking until I found one that was close to what I was looking for, then started to modify that. But I thought what would be good would be to leave it in here for about 5 seconds and then have it clear. And I'm sure there's a way to do that using a timer. Yeah, if I was actually going to be submitting this to an app store, I'd put that in there.
Actually, would it be better as soon as you hit the button, it clears it out and puts that 50 in the little text box so you know?
There's all sorts of ways. In fact, another way, you're right, we could clear it out, we could put up a little alert. A little modal alert that says the number 50. I even thought this whole thing, we could have set it up so you didn't even have these 2 labels. This could have all been done modally with just, I could have had this come up and do that. It could have said the number 50 was too low, you have now made 3 guesses. We could have done it, there's a lot of different ways that this could be done, is what I'm saying. All right? So, yes. All right. Then as we work our way down here, the number pressed, that's pretty simple. Clear the text field, clear the status label, clear the number of guesses, set my variable number of guests as equal to 0. And again, such a common programming mistake. You go and reset this to 0, but you don't reset the underlying counter to 0. You know that when you run it the next time with a new number and it says 8. You screwed up. All right? And then I called create random number again. And I started to do some work with alerts and the like, because I thought it probably would have been nice after you created that to just come up with an alert that said random number has been generated. All right, I started to work on that, and for some reason I got sidetracked and just didn't go back to it. All right, so again, I'm not saying does that totally make sense, but I'm hoping that it makes sense. All right, and I want you to know also,
Change the screen on top.
I also want everybody here to know that, and let me show you this quickly, especially if you're going to leave, but I just want to show this to everybody. As best I can, as best the Lord lets me. All right? I'm doing lectures on every chapter. You can't see it, of course. I'm doing lectures on every chapter that's in the book. I've already got chapter 1 out there, and I've got chapter 2 out there. Chapter 3 was the one I did most of it this morning, and that's when it just didn't, for some reason it didn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to do that if I get some time this weekend. I'm going to see if I can. Otherwise, when I come in here Monday, I'll do that. Now, I'm not saying that I'll get all 22 of the chapters done. I would like to. All right, so I will do the best that I can. All right. As you'd guess, the programs get progressively harder as you go on. But really, for the first 7 or 8 chapters, they're really not. They're pretty simplistic programs. And I'm more concerned with hitting on some of the major ideas. All right. So think about it this weekend. If you don't have a Mac at home, of course, you're not going to be able to work on this. I understand that. But think about it this weekend as far as how do you want to see this class progressing? I don't want it where I just give you these little mini programs. You know, that's not bad for now, all right? But I want it to a point where we can do some lecture, but not a lot, and give you some time to work on it. Because, again, that's when you're going to learn this stuff. Some of you have already got plans on apps and stuff you'd like to write. Okay, that's good. So think about how you want the class, or what you think our next step should be. Does all that make sense? All right. That's really what I had. Now we'll see if it taped.